Hey everyone! I never thought I'd be telling a story like this, but here we are. What started as a routine disagreement with my homeowners association, my HOA, turned into one of the most bizarre and costly disasters our neighborhood has ever faced. So, buckle up, because this is the story of how my HOA filled my water tank with concrete, without realizing it was the main water supply for the entire neighborhood. Let me take you back a bit. A few years ago, I bought this piece of property right at the edge of the neighborhood. It came with a large water tank on about 20,000 gallons. The seller had explained that the tank served a dual purpose, personal use and emergency backup. What none of us realized at the time, including the HOA, was that due to some very old and weird infrastructure from when the neighborhood was first built, that tank was actually part of the main water supply loop. Yay, one tank feeding water pressure to 30+ homes, including mine. Now, the HOA had always had issues with the tank, not because it didn't work, but because it was visible from the street and didn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the community. I get it, it's not the prettiest thing, but I submitted paperwork, offered to build a wooden enclosure, even got quotes for underground relocation. Still, every time the board shut it down, eventually they issued a formal notice. I was told to remove the eyesore immediately. I pushed back, explaining the situation and providing documentation that it wasn't just my water. This thing was connected to the whole block. Didn't matter. They told me I had 30 days, or they'd take action themselves. I thought they were bluffing. Turns out they weren't. I came home one day after work and noticed something was off. There were tire tracks in the grass near the tank, a bunch of tools left behind, and a massive smell of concrete in the air. I walked over, opened the hatch, and completely filled, set concrete, hard as rock, right inside the tank. Number 2. Warning, no call, no notice, nothing. Here's the kicker. 2 days later, people around the neighborhood started complaining about low water pressure, then brown water, then nothing. Total outage. People were checking their pipes, calling the city, getting plumbers out. Nobody could figure it out. The city checked their end, no issues. But the pressure loss was real, and it was affecting every single home, except the ones connected to separate systems. I put 2 and 2 together, called a plumber. They scoped the lines and confirmed it. My tank had been acting like a pressure regulator, an overflow buffer for a legacy water loop. The concrete inside, it blocked the outflow completely. And since the city had no idea it was even in use, they hadn't been maintaining it. That tank, ugly or not, was doing critical work. Naturally, I called the HOA. They denied everything, flat out, claimed they hadn't touched the tank. So I pulled footage from a neighbor's Ring camera. And guess who it showed? Contractors hired by the HOA, hauling bags of Quikrete wheelbarrows and hoses. Clear as day. That's when the lawyers got involved. I won't go into too many legal details here because some of it is still ongoing. But let's just say the HOA now knows exactly how vital that tank was. They tried to claim they were acting in the interest of community aesthetics, but that didn't hold up well when half the neighborhood had no running water for over a week. Some people had to relocate temporarily. Eventually, they brought in crews to demolish the entire tank, the one they filled with concrete, to rebuild a new system. But here's the part that really gets me. The HOA then sent out a letter, blaming me, said I failed to disclose critical infrastructure, and that it was my responsibility to maintain the system. Meanwhile, they're the ones who literally destroyed it. You can't make this up. I've since moved the tank underground, out of sight, with permits and full city approval. We're back online. But the damage, the chaos, the money lost, it could have all been avoided with one phone call or 1 ounce of common sense. So if you live under an HOA, make very sure they understand your property and your infrastructure. Because apparently, if they don't like how something looks, even if it's essential, they might just bury it in concrete. Literally. Thanks for watching. If you've got a horror story about your HOA, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. And if you're dealing with something similar, hang in there, document everything. Stay strong, and for the love of plumbing, protect your water tank. See you in the next one. Asterisk. Okay, so remember how the HOA filled my water tank with concrete? Well, that was just the beginning, because once the neighborhood lost water and fingers started pointing, things got way more serious than I ever expected. People were furious. One neighbor had just brought home a newborn, and couldn't even bathe the baby. Another gear-retired veteran, disabled, had to go days without running water. And everyone kept coming to me like it was my fault. So I did what I had to. I hosted an emergency neighborhood meeting. Right in my driveway, I printed the photos of the tank before and after. I showed the neighbors ring footage of the HOA's contractors pouring the concrete. You could literally hear them joking about plugging up that ugly thing once, and for all that meeting changed everything. The entire block started demanding answers from the board. And guess what? Half the board didn't even know the concrete thing had happened. The president had made the call on his own, thinking it'd win him points before re-election. He was wrong. 2 weeks later, the board held a vote. The president was removed, replaced with a new group that actually wanted to fix the mess. Brought in engineers, real ones, and sure enough, there were blueprints from decades ago showing that tank was a critical junction in the loop system. Turns out, when the neighborhood expanded in the 90s, they never fully upgraded the infrastructure. That tank? It was bridging the gap between the new and old zones. That's why cutting it off broke the entire loop. Eventually, the city stepped in. They did a full audit of the water infrastructure and actually found more surprise dependencies. The neighborhood had been running on patches and band-aids for years. If the HOA hadn't made that stupid move, we might have never found out until something even worse happened, like a contamination or pressure surge. So, in a weird way, the HOA may have saved us from a bigger disaster. But don't get me wrong, the cost, insane, tens of thousands in repairs. A full rebuild of the tank system, a new filtration setup. Guess who paid for it? The HOA's insurance. And the HOA members, yep, we all got hit with a special assessment fee. Ironic, huh? Still, I sleep better now, knowing we've got a working system and a smarter board. So, you've heard the part where my HOA filled my water tank with concrete? You've heard about the water outage, the neighborhood chaos, the camera footage. But what I haven't told you yet is how that led to a full-scale legal battle that's still playing out. Let's rewind a bit. Once I had that video footage and confirmation from plumbers, I lawyered up. I wasn't just Madai, was legally prepared. My attorney sent a cis and dicist a demand for damages and a warning that we'd be filing for negligence, property destruction, and loss of essential services. The HOA didn't take it seriously at first. Then the city got involved. Because technically, interrupting water infrastructurist, if it supplies multiple dwellings, can fall under public utility interference. That's a big deal. Next thing I know, I'm on a Zoom call with city engineers, my lawyer, the HOA as lawyer, and some officials from the county. Everyone's trying to figure out who authorized this, who signed the contractor check. Why wasn't the city consulted? It was like a courtroom drama butt over a water tank. The HOA's defense was pathetic. They said the tank looked abandoned and claimed they had no idea it was active. But emails surfaced where I had specifically told them multiple times that the tank was live and important. They even ignored a copy of a report from a year prior showing the tank pressure readings. Long story short, I won the initial round. They admitted liability. Their insurance company had to pay me for damages, legal costs, and partial relocation. But then came the class action. Yep, you heard that right. A group of neighbors teamed up and filed a separate lawsuit against the HOA for reckless governance, water service interruption, and health risk. One family had to stay in a hotel for 4 nights. Another couldn't flush their toilets for a week. Some had to shower at gyms. This one small act of ignorance set off a legal domino effect that's still going as of now. The HOA has new bylaws in place. Major infrastructure changes require a third-party verification, city clearance, and a 75% neighborhood vote. Too late for my tank, but a win for the future. And here's the kicker. That same HOA president who started this whole thing, he's now banned from ever holding a board seat in our community. Again, all over a tank. Just let that sink in. Asterisk, you'd think after the lawsuits, the water outage, the HOA president getting removed, and thousands in damages. This story would be over. But no, 3 months after everything supposedly got fixed, I got a knock at my door. It was a city utilities worker holding a clipboard and a stack of flagged permits. He looked dead serious and said, "We need to talk about your street's water loop. We think there's more buried under here than anyone realized." My heart sank out apparently during their inspection of the tank situation. The city had noticed inconsistencies between their current maps and the ones from the 1970s. Multiple service lines weren't accounted for, like ghost pipes, and pressure readings still weren't normal, so a few days later, the street got blocked off. Bulldozers came in. They dug a trench 6 feet deep right down the middle of the road. And that's when they found it, a second sealed-off tank, buried. No markings, no permits, but still somehow connected to the system. Turns out, the original developers had used 2 tanks in tandem back in the day to manage load balance and water pressure. But over time, one got sealed off and forgotten. It's the only reason the system worked at all for the last 20 years was because my tank had been compensating for both. No one knew, not even the city. It was like unearthing a time capsule of poor planning. And here's the kicker. That buried tank was leaking. Slowly, over time, into the soil beneath the neighborhood. No contamination yet, but had the HOA not filled my tank with concrete, we might have never known. Eventually, it could have turned into a full-scale water contamination crisis, so in some twisted way, that reckless act ended up preventing something worse. Still, the city wasn't thrilled. They issued emergency funds to remove the underground tank, patch the system, and repipe parts of the neighborhood. Streets got torn up for weeks. Driveways were blocked. People were mad. Guess who they blamed? Yeah, me. Even though I didn't bury the tank, even though I saved them from a disaster, even though the HOA started this whole mess. But public opinion doesn't care about nuance. I was just the guy with that water tank drama. So for a while, I became the neighborhood villain, until the mayor showed up. I kid you not, the actual mayor of our town came out, held a press conference right in front of the construction site, and said, quote, "This is a wake-up call about the importance of infrastructure transparency. If it weren't for this homeowner's persistence, we'd be dealing with far worse today." That moment changed everything. People started apologizing, offering help. Someone baked me a pie. A group of neighbors even started a petition to name the new water facility after me as a joke, the My Name Memorial Tank. The city ended up upgrading the entire water grid for our section. Brand new lines, modern sensors, even an app to monitor water usage in real time. So after all the chaos, the lawsuits, the finger pointing, we now have the best water infrastructure in the county. All because the HOA couldn't stand the sight of an ugly tank. Moral of the story? Don't judge infrastructure by its cover. And never underestimate the butterfly effect of petty decisions, especially if concrete is involved. Asterisk, it's been over a year since the day concrete in my water tank. A year filled with courtrooms, contractors, angry neighbors, emergency city crews, and more stress than I ever thought possible from something as basic hand as vital as water. But today, I stood at the edge of my property, looking out over a newly landscaped section of the yard where the tank used to be. The hole is gone now. The noise, the chaos, the tension gone to, in its place, a new water monitoring station, cleanly built, quietly humming in the background. Fully permitted, fully legal, invisible to the eye, but powerful beneath the surface. The neighborhood is thriving. The lawns are green again. Kids are playing in sprinklers, like nothing ever happened. The city even installed a plaque, not some grand thing, just a small steel sign on a post that reads, "Legacy Water Loop Upgraded 2024. Community-led restoration." No mention of the tank, no mention of the HOA, but I know what it means. Know why it's there. Funny thing is, I almost sold the house during the height of the madness. I came this close to walking away. The frustration, the legal fees, the public opinion, it got heavy. And part of me thought, why keep fighting for people who didn't even understand what I was protecting? But something told me to stay. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was pride, or maybe it was just that I knew this place could be better. And, you know what? It is not just because the water runs cleaner or the systems work better, but because people started talking again. Neighbors who had never spoken before started asking questions. Where's our power line buried? Who actually maintains our drainage? Should we review the HOA's rules again? People started caring, and the board, the new one, they invite residents to every monthly meeting. They publish full, transparent budgets. They even asked Mimi to join the infrastructure subcommittee. Declined not out of bitterness, just peace. I did what I had to do. I stood my ground. And maybe in the weirdest, most inconvenient way possible. That concrete incident ended up being the crack that let in the light dot. So this is it. The tank is gone. The system is rebuilt, and I've got my life back, not the same as before, but maybe better for it. And sometimes, when the sprinklers click on early in the morning, and I hear that familiar rush of pressure through the pipes, I smile, because I know what it took to keep that sound alive. Thanks for listening. Stay grounded, stay vocal, and don't ever let anyone pour concrete over something that matters. See you in the next story.